The moment she goes cold, your chest tightens, and everything in you assumes you're about to lose her. Here's the truth most men are never told. When a woman pulls back emotionally, it is not always the absence of feeling. Sometimes it is the presence of too much feeling, arriving before safety is fully secured. As a psychologist, I've watched this pattern repeat endlessly. A woman grows warmer, more open, more responsive. She shares pieces of herself she doesn't share easily. Then suddenly, the temperature drops. Messages slow, energy shifts, affection feels muted, and men panic because silence feels like rejection. But psychologically, withdrawal is often regulation. When a woman begins to care deeply, her nervous system doesn't celebrate first, it evaluates risk. Love for women is not just emotion, it's exposure. The deeper she feels, the more she becomes aware of what she could lose her autonomy, her emotional balance, her sense of control. So when feelings intensify faster than certainty, the body applies brakes. Coldness is not always distance, sometimes it's containment. The first thing that happens internally is this. She realizes she's becoming emotionally invested, and that realization is confronting. Women are socialized to be emotionally aware, but also emotionally responsible. She asks herself questions you never hear out loud. Am I giving too much? Am I thinking about him too often? Am I centering him too early? That internal questioning doesn't feel romantic. It feels vulnerable. So she pulls back, not to punish you, not to test you, but to regain equilibrium, to see if her feelings settle when she creates space. This is a self check, not a strategy. And the depth of that check is proportional to how strongly she feels. Men often misunderstand this because male attraction tends to move outward. You feel more, you pursue more. Female attraction often moves inward first. She feels more, she contains more. She needs to know whether her feelings are safe to let expand or whether they will destabilize her. Here's where things go wrong. When you react to her coldness with anxiety, pressure, or emotional volatility, her nervous system receives a clear message. Pulling back was necessary. Because now she's managing not just her feelings, but yours. And desire cannot grow where emotional labor increases. But when you stay grounded, when you don't chase, don't withdraw dramatically, don't punish the distance, something powerful happens. Her system relaxes. She sees that space does not equal loss, that closeness does not equal control, that her emotions don't put the relationship at risk. This is why coldness that follows intimacy is often a sign of attachment forming, not breaking. Love does not always arrive warm. Sometimes it arrives cautious. And the men who understand this don't try to force heat back into the connection. They become steady, predictable, calm. They allow her to return at her own pace without making her feel guilty for needing space. Because what she's really asking, without saying a word, is this: if I let myself love you more, will I still be safe? And how you respond in silence answers that question louder than anything you could ever say. When she goes cold after closeness, the second thing happening inside her is a test she isn't consciously running, but her nervous system is. It's not a test of your loyalty or your interest. It's a test of emotional stability. She's watching what happens when intensity drops, not because she enjoys distance, but because she needs to know whether connection with you comes at the cost of her peace. At this stage, she is highly attuned to shifts, not just in communication, but in energy. Does your tone change? Do you become sharper, quieter, passive, overly nice, or emotionally heavy? Women don't evaluate love by words alone. They evaluate it by how regulated you remain when the emotional weather changes. Here's a hard truth. Many women have learned that when they pull back, men either chase or disappear. Both outcomes feel unsafe. Chasing feels like pressure. Disappearing feels like abandonment. Neither tells her that her feelings can exist without consequences. So she watches, quietly, carefully. Inside, she's asking herself something profound. Can I have space without losing him or being punished for it? Because if the answer is no, then love becomes expensive. And when love feels expensive, women don't invest more. They conserve. This is why the cold phase often looks confusing. She hasn't stopped caring. She's temporarily stopped expressing. Expression requires trust. And trust isn't built when emotional reactions feel unpredictable. Another layer most men miss: coldness often shows up when a woman senses she's starting to need you emotionally. Needing someone threatens autonomy, so she pulls back to reassert independence, not to end the bond, but to balance it. Think of it like this: warmth is her leaning in, coldness is her checking her footing. If the ground feels solid, she steps forward again. If it shakes, she retreats permanently. What makes men stumble here is ego. Silence feels personal. Distance feels like failure. So they try to fix it with explanation, reassurance, or intensity. But intensity at the wrong time reads as instability. It confirms her fear that closeness will cost her emotional freedom. The men who pass this phase do something deceptively simple. They stay the same tone, same self-respect, same emotional bandwidth. They don't escalate and they don't retreat. They allow space without resentment. That behavior sends a powerful signal: you can have your feelings and I can have mine, and neither of us collapses. And when a woman senses that, something shifts internally. Her body learns that love doesn't equal loss of self, that intimacy doesn't mean chaos, that being close to you doesn't require hypervigilance. This is where attachment deepens quietly. No drama, no declarations, just a subtle return of warmth, a message, a smile, a softening. Coldness that is met with steadiness often melts into trust. Coldness that is met with fear hardens into distance. The difference isn't what she does. It's how you hold your ground while she figures out how deeply she wants to stand beside you. There's a moment during her cold phase that you never see, but it matters more than anything she shows you. It's the moment she notices you didn't change. Not dramatically, not performatively. You didn't become colder to punish her, and you didn't become warmer to pull her back. You stayed recognizable. That moment recalibrates her entire emotional map. When a woman goes cold because feelings are growing, she's scanning for one thing above all else: emotional reliability. Not excitement, not intensity, reliability. She's asking herself whether closeness with you creates emotional whiplash or emotional grounding. Most men think attraction is about doing more at this stage: more attention, more reassurance, more presence. But psychologically, this is where less reactivity matters more than more effort. Your ability to remain emotionally intact without withdrawing your warmth or chasing her approval tells her something no words can. It tells her you are not dependent on her emotional state to regulate yourself. That's rare, and rarity creates safety. Inside her, something begins to soften. The fear that her feelings might destabilize the dynamic starts to fade. She realizes she doesn't have to manage you. She doesn't have to protect herself from your reactions. She can feel deeply without bracing for consequences. And that's when warmth begins to return. But not loudly, not all at once. Slowly, in small gestures. A question she didn't need to ask. A message she didn't have to send. A laugh that lingers a second longer than before. This is not manipulation, it's recalibration. But here's the crucial part. If you mistake this return as a green light to suddenly increase intensity, you disrupt the very process that allowed her to feel safe again. Emotional pacing matters. Love isn't built through peaks, it's built through consistency. Men who lose women at this stage often do so right after things start to feel good again. They interpret warmth as permission to lean hard, to accelerate, to define, to secure. And suddenly, she feels that familiar tightening in her chest, the sense that closeness might come with pressure. So she cools again, this time more decisively. The men who keep her don't rush the return, they receive it calmly, They match her warmth without surpassing it. They allow trust to accumulate instead of trying to lock it in. Here's the psychology underneath all of this. Women bond when emotional safety outpaces emotional intensity. When safety lags behind intensity, the body intervenes with distance. Coldness is not rejection, it's correction. And when correction works, it disappears. If you've ever been confused by a woman who pulled back, returned warmer, then stayed consistent, it's because something inside her resolved. She learned that her feelings didn't put her at risk with you. That's not luck. That's emotional leadership. Leadership here doesn't mean control, it means containment. The ability to hold space without gripping it. The strength to stay present without demanding certainty. When a woman feels that, she doesn't need to go cold anymore, because she's no longer protecting herself from you. She's opening toward you without fear of losing herself in the process. By the time her warmth returns and stays, something fundamental has shifted inside her. Not excitement, trust. And trust is what allows love to deepen without triggering self-protection. This is the part most men never recognize because it doesn't announce itself. It shows up as ease, as effort that feels natural, as closeness that no longer needs to be negotiated. When a woman has gone cold and come back warmer, she has already answered a critical internal question. Can I feel deeply here without losing myself? If the answer became yes, it's because your behavior proved something your words never could. At this stage, her feelings are no longer fragile. They're integrated. She doesn't feel the need to monitor them or pull back to regain control. She starts to imagine continuity, not fantasy, but possibility. You become part of her emotional landscape, not a variable she has to manage. Here's where many men accidentally sabotage everything. They finally feel relief, certainty, validation, and instead of staying grounded, they relax their presence, or they push for definition, or they assume the work is done. But attraction doesn't die from effort. It dies from complacency or pressure. What keeps love alive here is the same thing that allowed it to form: emotional steadiness, being the same man in closeness that you were in distance. Not less attentive, not more intense, just consistent. Women don't stay because a man never pulls away. They stay because when emotional temperature changes, he doesn't lose himself. He doesn't punish. He doesn't plead. He doesn't disappear. He remains centered. This is why coldness earlier wasn't a threat. It was information. It revealed whether you could lead emotionally without dominance and without fear. And if you're still here, it means you passed a test you didn't even know was happening. So understand this clearly. When she went cold like that, it didn't mean she cared less. It meant she cared enough to protect herself while figuring out whether you were safe to love deeply. And when she came back, it wasn't random. It was earned. Now here's the equation I want you to answer honestly. When a woman pulls back emotionally, do you respond with stability or with anxiety? Write your answer in the comments. If this video helped you see a pattern you've lived through but never understood, like the video. Subscribe if you want psychology that gives you clarity instead of confusion. And share this with a friend who thinks coldness always means rejection, because this might change how he sees everything.